This session is a continuation of the previous session on insecure direct object reference, where we learned what an insecure direct object reference is and also studied the different areas in an application where you can test for an insecure direct object reference. You can watch the fundamentals of this topic by clicking on the link above. The link is also left in the description of this video. Okay, let's dive in. So we learned in the previous session that insecure direct object reference belongs to a category of vulnerabilities called business logic flaws, and it's one of a kind which cannot be identified using automated scanners or tools, but a set of tools called proxies can definitely aid in testing for insecure direct object reference manually. Today, we are going to test for insecure direct object reference in a sample application using BurpSuite by portswigger. Now, I want you to know BurpSuite has different versions, particularly the community edition or the community version, which is what we will use as a proxy for today's testing. But there is also a professional licensed version, which is not just a proxy but an automated scanner. You can freely download the community edition by going to the portswigger website. Okay, now I'm going to start from the scratch. For you to be able to download BurpSuite, just go to the portswigger website, the community edition in specific. Go to the portswigger website and look for BurpSuite community edition, and just provide your email for you to be able to download the installer. Now, the community, portswigger community, might ask you a few questions as to what your current status. Are you currently in the field of cybersecurity? Are you a student and stuff like that? But it doesn't really matter. Regardless of what your responses are, you would still be able to download BurpSuite Community Edition. And once you have the installer, just go ahead and install the tool in itself in your machine. And once you're done, go ahead and get started with BurpSuite. So I already have BurpSuite installed in my machine and I'm going to launch it. I have BurpSuite Community Edition and I'm just going to launch it. And this is what you see in the screen, the blue screen when you go about and start the tool. Now it says temporary project in memory. I have BurpSuite Community Edition. So what this really does is it temporarily stores all of the testing that you do in memory, which means when you test URL after URL, like you hit on one URL and then go about testing another URL, you would be able to come back and see what kind of testing you have done in the initial URL as you work through the exercise, as you work through the testing in itself. Now, with the community edition, once you hit close and once you close the tool, you won't be able to refer the project, refer the testing that you have done at any point in future time. But then with the professional version, you will have other options, like you will be able to save the testing that you have done as a new project in your disk, and you will be able to open the files later for reference to see what kind of testing you have done. Now, that's not really significant for us for this particular demonstration, because we are just going to see how best we can test insecure direct object reference in a sample application. So I'm going to hit next and go with the default configuration and start BurpSuite. Okay, this is what you see in the screen. So the first thing that you have to do once you have BurpSuite initiated is to look at the proxy settings, not just within BurpSuite, but within the tool as well as in your web browser. So I'm going to go to proxy to see where exactly, what IP address and what port exactly BurpSuite is running. So it's running in 127.0.0.1 and port 8080. Now some of you know this particular IP, which is 127.0.0.1, refers to the local host and 8080 refers to the HTTP port. Now let's not get distracted with the details of ports and IP addresses, but for now just know that this tool is running in localhost, IP address and 8080 port. And what you have to do now is go back to your web browser and tell the web browser to redirect all web traffic to BurpSuite, which runs in this particular IP address and this particular port. And then BurpSuite can take all the requests from the web browser and send that over to the web server. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the web browser, go to its proxy settings, and change the proxy. So it is 127.0.0.1 and 8080, which is where BurpSuite is currently running on. Now, once you're done with this, go in and check if the proxy settings which we have made has taken effect. Just go about browsing anything in internet and go back to BurpSuite. Close the settings, go back to BurpSuite and see if what you're searching for is here. So let me go back and look for demo.testfire.net and see, yeah, I can see demo.testfire.net traffic being routed via BurpSuite. So once you see this, you can make sure that your settings are good enough and then go about testing whatever you want to test. Now, our objective for testing for today is insecure direct object reference, and the sample application I have chosen is Ultra Mutual again, which is a demo website where you can go about and test and find security vulnerabilities. Now, disclaimer again, do not go in and test your skills or test any kind of vulnerabilities randomly in any application on internet. You're not allowed to do it. This is one of the applications which is primarily built for you to learn cybersecurity and application security testing and classes of vulnerabilities. So I'm going to sign into this application with some credentials that I have. I'd go with jsmith, which is one of the users of this application. And what you see here is this particular user has 3 accounts. They have a savings account, they have a check-in account, and they have a credit card. I'm going to see his transaction details for his savings account, or his account details for his savings account. Now, if you remember, I mentioned all of this traffic is being routed via BurpSuite, which means when you hit on select or when you hit on a particular button within the front page of your application, the request goes to BurpSuite and it is then taken to the web server, and the response from the web server is given back to BurpSuite, and BurpSuite sends the response back to the web browser for you to see the results. I'm going to show that in a minute for you. So for demo.testfire, what you have seen in the screen now, which is show account, is here. So for a particular account, this is the request that was sent by the web browser to BurpSuite, and which in turn was sent to the web server, and web server sent back a request, which is sent back a response, which is a HTML HTTP response, and that is being given back to the web browser. Now, what you can do is, for you to make sure what you're doing is right, I'll come from the beginning. I'll just go in and sign in and perform the same steps with some additional verification. So I'm going to sign in, and I'm going to say within the proxy option in BurpSuite, I'm going to say intercept is on, which means any request from now that is transmitted by your web browser will be sent via BurpSuite, and you will be able to clearly see it. Now, I'm going to click on go, and you see the request that is being sent here. Now, one of the primary ways you identify insecure direct object reference using BurpSuite is using 2 options within the tool. One of it is repeater and the other one is intruder. Now, you can also use comparer. We will get to the details, but for now, remember repeater and intruder. So like we studied in the last session, for you to be able to test insecure direct object reference, you should identify what is called objects or identifiers, which you can change, the values of which you can change to see if you can fetch the details of another user. Now, these identifiers or the values for these objects or identifiers are usually normal acceptable input and does not really involve any special character, like in this case where it is just an account number in numeric form. So what I'm going to do is, before sending this request forward to the web server, I'm going to right click and say send to repeater, and then go about and forward the request. And you will see the response for it in your web browser. Now what I'm going to do is, I sent one of the requests to repeater, and I'm going to modify this to say one which is not an account for the existing user. Remember, we signed in as jsmith, and jsmith has 3 accounts: savings checking and a credit card account, and his accounts start with 800002, and he has checking account which is 800003, and he has a credit card account. And this particular number that you see here, which is 800001, is not his account. It is the account of some other user. And I'm going to say send. And the response that you see here is 200 OK. So whenever you see a 200 OK HTTP response, it kind of affirms that you were able to get a positive response from the web server for the input or for the request that you have sent to the web server. So we can make sure with this particular testing, with a simple testing by sending to the repeater, that this particular parameter or this particular request is vulnerable to insecure direct object reference. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is turn interception off for a minute and show you what comparer is really for before we get into the intruder option. So for that, I'm going to go back to this website and repeat the same steps. I'm going to log in as jsmith and click on intercept, hit go. And when I see the request here, I just go in and forward the request. And I should be able to see the recent request that I sent here. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, you can see all the requests that you sent in the HTTP history option. So what I'm going to do is, I'll come back here, right click on the response that I receive and send to comparer. Now what I'll also do is, I'll forward this request to the repeater, change the parameter to a different value, send it, see what the response is, and send that again to the comparer. So now I have 2 HTTP response that I can compare word by word for 2 different parameter values. So all you will see is, this one has the account information for 800001, and this one has the account information for a different account. Now remember, we logged in as jsmith. jsmith has access to this particular account here, which is 800002, but he really shouldn't have access to this. But because there is an insecure direct object reference in the application, he was able to tamper the value and get access to the account information of another user, which in turn brings about details like the current balance and all of the different account information for jsmith to see. So the real purpose of comparer is to compare 2 requests or 2 response to see what the difference is, what this particular person has access to when there is a vulnerability within the application. Okay, I'm going to close this now, and let's get to the intruder option, which is the real thing that we have to discuss today. So this is the particular request that we want to test for insecure direct object reference, which has an identifier, and I'm going to send this to the intruder. Now The purpose of intruder is to supply different values for this particular object identifier and see what the HTTP response is for that particular parameter value. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to tell intruder that this is the object or identifier that it should test. So the way to do it is to add what is called a dollar, which is kind of a placeholder for the tool to know which particular parameter it should intrude on. And once you tell the tool what the parameter is, you should also supply all the values that it can use in the form of payloads. So I go to payloads, I say this is just a number value, and I say start from 80001 and maybe go up to 80000, no, 800050. So it's going to replace the parameter value from this particular value to whatever you supply as the int value, and it's going to get the responses back to us. So I'm going to say start attack. And there is a limitation on what an intruder can perform within the community edition. The professional version, which is the real scanner, has much more ways and payloads and inputs to go about and intrude a particular parameter. But this is sufficient for now. I'm going to click OK and I'm going to see what the results are. So as you see here, for the first few values like 1, 2, which is actually the real account of the user in itself, 3, which is again the actual account of the user in itself, for all of these you get a 200 OK response. And when you see a 200 OK response, like I said in the beginning, it's a way of the web server telling you that you have got a positive response for the input or for the request that you have submitted. And when you see a 500 or a 404, all of these refer to error messages or it's a page that is not found and stuff like that. And when you see 200, when you send it to an intruder, it means that for this particular case, the user has access to all of these different accounts, and you will also be able to see the response for each of these requests when you click on it. So this is the request that was sent. You see the hexadecimal value. Okay, so you were not able to see, here is the response. So you will get to see the response. You can see the full response. It will have account information, it will have the balance details and stuff like that. And there should also be a option for you to show the response in the browser. You just copy this URL, go back to the browser and look for this detail, and you should be able to, this is actually the balance for a different account. This is for account history, which is actually not the account of this user in itself. So BurpSuite will be able to give you back all the values that it attempted and return the accounts of all the users that this particular user, because of a vulnerability, because of insecure direct object reference, is able to access. So that is the purpose of intruder. Now you can also go one step further and look for additional information using the grep option that you can see in the settings tab, where we have grep extract. You can use the extract the following items from response and add a particular term. In our case, I'll say available balance, and I'll say display 1000 characters after you see this particular term in the response. So I'll say okay, go back and start an attack again. So this time you not only see the parameter values that are supplied and the status code, but you would also be able to see the balance on each of these different accounts. So yeah, again, the balance details of accounts of another users. So this is a simple way to test insecure direct object reference using BurpSuite. Even though you will not be able to do a full scan to perform an full scan to identify vulnerabilities that are classified business logic flaws, you can use proxies to aid in testing. Now, it's really difficult to go about and manually supply parameters for each of these values one after the other because it's time consuming. Instead, you can use intruder, repeater, and comparer options within BurpSuite to help you with testing. Keep watching for other classes of vulnerabilities and demonstrations in the upcoming sessions. Bye for now.